to this session on education technology. It is a great pleasure to be here and with this fine panel who I'll introduce in a moment, but I just want to give you a few introductory remarks. So it was about 7 years ago that I spoke at a conference on education technology in front of a bunch of innovators. And I told them about the over 200 million children who were unable to read a single word, despite having been in school for 2 years. I also told them about the scale of the challenge was so immense that the only way we were going to address it was through breakthrough technology. Since that speech, technology has yet to deliver on its promise. Few new technologies have broken through to have measurable impact at scale on education outcomes while also being affordable and sustainable. In fact, much of the world today, the only technology available to teachers in the classroom is chalk and a blackboard, a technology that was introduced in 1801. The COVID pandemic of the past 2 years has been devastating for education. 1.6 billion children worldwide were out of school in 2020. Learning losses are staggering. In fact, I've heard several speakers this week talk about a lost generation of learners. But, as Winston Churchill famously said, never let a good crisis go to waste. Governments have risen to the challenge, putting in place remote learning opportunities, investing in no-tech, low-tech, and high-tech solutions, and supporting teachers to make the pivot to adapt to a new reality. The pandemic has focused the attention of the global community for technology solutions for education like never before. The pandemic and technology have also forced us to rethink what it takes to transform education. They have blurred the boundaries of where learning can take place, with whom, how, and why. The challenge is to design and apply technology that reaches the very last child and ultimately improves learning. By this, I don't just mean the right solution, but the right solution that can be taken to scale within education systems that is also affordable and is built with inclusion and equity at its center. I am delighted to welcome as 5 distinguished experts for a dynamic discussion on the current trends of how technology can be used to enable students to enjoy every advantage, and we're talking about students everywhere. So please join me in welcoming His Excellency Dr. David Senge, Minister of Basic and Senior Secondary Education from Sierra Leone. Dr. Aida Naziri, co-founder and CMO of Lux AI. Mr. Audrin Le Baron, Director of Digital Education, Ministry of Education in France. Dr. Karina Montilla, boy, good. I'm struggling today. Okay, Dr. Karina Montilla Edmonds, thank you, Senior Vice President and Head of Academies and University Alliances at SAP. And finally, Mr. Antonello Barbero, who is the CEO and General Manager of Education at H-Farm. So panelists, I'll be asking questions, but keep your responses to 2 minutes, and so we can have a second round of quick responses. So let me begin with David Senge. Minister, please. In your role as Minister of Education and Chief Innovation Officer, how are you expecting, or even already witnessing, the disruptive potential of technology in education? And what measures are in place to ensure the use of EdTech is an equalizer?
Thank you very much for that question, and I would like to start by thanking the UAE government for being such gracious hosts to all of us. I do think, as in your opening, you mentioned that chalk and blackboards was in the classroom, and I think that is complemented by paper. So we often forget that the chalk, the blackboard, and paper are technologies, and these technologies are important and often the only technologies available to millions of children, hundreds of millions of children around the world. And I think you also spoke about technology and scale. And underlining that, and something that we don't explicitly talk about, so I'm happy that it's coming out, is equity. That technology, how it's been used in EdTech before, actually created for the divide. That when we spoke about AI in education, it was about the special individual child trying to understand everything about the psychosocial about that child, when that child wakes up, what time they have the best energy in the day, when you should optimize what kind of content you give them. And that kept us further. And when equity is not placed at how we roll out EdTech, you see that it makes things worse. And systems and robustness, these technologies have to work everywhere. They have to work in the rain in Sierra Leone. It rains for 6 months. So whatever you roll out, including paper, if you're giving paper and kids don't have bags, it's going to get destroyed. So we have to think about systems and robustness, particularly when we deploy technologies. And quality. Often, look, my background is in healthcare, and people think that when you develop things at scale with technology, then you lower quality. Those are assumptions that we cannot accept, particularly for education. Quality has to remain standard, and that's why we deploy things at scale. And technology affords us that, actually. In Sierra Leone, one of the things that we've been doing, and to mitigate this, is when we have what we call hybrid systems, hybrid technology systems. When we build solutions, it has to work online, offline, it has to work for the web, it has to work on mobile phones, and it has to work on paper as well. So one example is we developed these dictionaries. And these dictionaries you can check using SMS and USSD on your phone, anybody, anywhere in the world. And you could check your results as well. Parents are now more involved in understanding their children's education, because you can take your child's unique registration number for a transition exam, something that used to take 10 weeks and up to $10. Now every parent can access it immediately on their phone, whether you're in the market or in the farm. And we see this everywhere the president goes. Parents, farmers are thanking him for the technology. People understand the value and the impact of technology bringing equity. Another thing we've been working on is with learning passports with UNICEF and some of our partners, where we're bringing a technology and solution for content that is online, and you can have offline versions, and you can have mobile. And we take those same content and print them and send them to kids who are in remote and hard-to-reach areas. And I think it's important that we are able to think about technology in these forms. Finally, one of the things that we've done in Sierra Leone was we launched what we call the Education Innovation Challenge when I was Chief Innovation Officer in 2018. It was a $1.5 million idea to test, seed, and scale innovations in education. And we did that for 2 years, and now with our partners, Education Outcomes Fund, that has been scaled to $15 million, right? And I think it's this element where we can go 10x, and hopefully in a year or two with our partners, we can go another 10x to really take these solutions, not just in 340 schools, and now to thousands of schools in Sierra Leone, but we can expand it globally. We as a world have to make sure that these technologies are scalable.
Fantastic. Thank you, David. Okay, so let me go to Aida. So among the many projects of Lux AI, you've developed assistive robots to support learning for children with autism. What results have you seen with children? And what is required for such a tool to become accessible for teachers and families in low-income countries?
So actually, about 7 years ago, when we created Lux AI and we developed QUT Robot, the initial idea was that based on the scientific research, the robot has the power to facilitate and mediate a joint interaction between the caregivers and the children, and can improve the quality of the education by enhancing the engagement, attention, and motivation of the students. But during the last couple of years, and particularly during the pandemic time, we saw that when robots are used, for example, at home, the major impact is the fact that this robot is empowering these non-specialized caregivers who are really interested to support the children and provide education, but they do not necessarily have the knowledge. And through the robot, we are able to deliver an evidence-based and a data-driven method of practice that can really improve the outcome of the children in a, let's say, very economical manner. And this is something that we see that is a challenge in a global scale, and particularly in the countries which are developing, that these human resources and the facilities that are necessary for this type of specialized intervention is not accessible. And we think that by having a technology such as QUT Robot, we are not just providing a tool for them, but we are actually importing and, let's say, sharing a knowledge and a methodology and the best practices that are available. And the challenge to actually make these technologies accessible for a lot of countries is that these technologies need to be proven basically effective to deliver these sessions, and they need to be considered seriously, in a sense that a lot of time the challenge of implementation of this solution is that they are considered as a let's say, add-on feature, that when you have everything settled, if you have a budget, then you import the technology and use it as an add-on. But in a lot of cases, this is a very serious way of addressing these gaps that are very expensive and very difficult to fill, but they can be filled through the technology in a very efficient and in a very economical and cost-effective way. So building this awareness about the value of the technology in the education, I would say, can be the biggest barrier of actually making it accessible for all around the world, including the countries which are basically developing.
Did you bring one of them with you?
I have it one in Abu Dhabi, yes.
Wish we had it in the panel. We'll have to show it to everybody. So, okay, Audrey. So your vast technological experience brings a different perspective to the world of education. In your opinion, how can ministries of education work with private companies to make national education systems more efficient and promote better access and better learning for all children?
Well, what still strikes me every day is the variety of actors in the digital education ecosystem. You have many actors. You have the state, of course. You have its operators, local authorities, EdTech companies, non-profit organizations, and all of these actors contribute to the richness of the offering. But if you don't have a global technical and interoperability model, a real framework of rules, well, this offering can become a real mess, actually, for the end user. And by the end user, I mean students, of course, parents, teachers, and managers, school managers. And just an example, when you have multiple services, you have multiple login passwords to learn, you have to fill in different informations every time. Your credentials are not shared together between these tools, etc., etc. And that wasn't such a problem before COVID-19, because these technologies, these services weren't that widespread, actually. But now, with the crisis, they have become widespread. All parents, pupils, teachers use them on a day-to-day basis. And now it's becoming a real pain to cope with this complexity. So I'm convinced that the state and ministry has a major role in in building this set of rules that makes things work seamlessly together. And I think the first thing is to define and share a cartography of the functions of the education, of the digital education system, and then fix and define a certain number of rules, probably data protection rules, which is fundamental to make things confident, and a technical framework with an interoperability model, very crucial, and make this framework mandatory for each actor that wants to offer a service in the digital education. And that's, I think, the way to do so that every service provided by each actor can work seamlessly together to the benefits of the end user.
I struggle with remembering all those passwords, so I would love to have that happen. Leaving aside the importance of that for education, but so I look forward to seeing your ideas being adopted. So, Karina, you've spent much of your career connecting people and innovative technologies with market needs. Improving learning outcomes across the globe is indisputably a market need. As EdTech options abound, how do we incentivize the technology companies to put learning at the center of product development?
Sure. First, I want to say thank you to Rewire for this great panel, and also say that you have a lot of experts here, but one of the knowledge I bring is as a parent, and I have learners at home who had to deal with this COVID situation as well. But to address your question, I think companies are very much incentivized to make sure that we are not just contributing, but really the key player in education, because of the skill gaps that we're already seeing with us. So some of the things, I guess I've been fortunate with my current employer at SAP. We have a Young Thinkers program, which provides coding to young students and really encourages students to build the digital skills. And one of the ways that I'm excited that we offer this is that, like I said, it's global. This is that can be used in partnership. We are actually, it's called SNAP. It's a software program, but we also partner with universities to make sure that students are building the skills that they need. And part of that is because you want to have, besides having the skills gap, you also want to work, it's a global company, so we have to make sure that we're playing on a global field and making sure that we're building products that everybody can use, which is so important. For differently abled students, as Ada has just illustrated with the software that she's providing. But we want to make sure that our products are useful to everyone, and you need to have everybody at the table building those tools, right? So if you want to build for everybody, you really have to have everybody at the table. So I think the biggest driver for technology company is one, like I mentioned, the skills gap, making sure that we can hire employees in the future that are tech savvy and have the skills that are needed, but also on the diversity side, making sure that our products and services have gender equity, so that that's the other piece in a lot of the products that we're putting out. How do we make sure that everybody has access to them, and that it's a lot more fun to learn when the tool that you're using or the lesson resonates with you. Mm-hmm. And so making sure that we're customizing, this is something that companies can do, making sure that our tools and services can be customized for a regional audience. I often refer to, again, SAP being based in Germany, and the German educational system is very well recognized globally, but it doesn't always resonate globally. So how do we make sure that we are building products and services for a regional audience? So hopefully, I know we're limited on time, but
Just
hopefully
a quick
that
follow-up.
address- yeah.
Audrey was talking about having kind of rules for the road and for a particular market. Does that help you, or is that a challenge?
No, I think that helps, absolutely, because we want to customize our educational tools for the region. So absolutely.
Okay,
I think that's great.
Thank you. Antonello, so digital transformation has hit every industry at unprecedented speed, yet education systems may well have received the hardest blow as they were brought to an unprecedented halt in 2020. What opportunities does this provide for schools and systems to shift and adopt innovative approaches to improve learning and equity?
Thank you, Charles. Many opportunities indeed, but I would like to start with some obligations as well. And I think that the reward is throwing at us one of them. That is rethinking a model that, as you said at the very beginning, is based on a technology that is 2 centuries old. And I would ask to all of us, would we put today our kids in a car that is driven here in Dubai, in Tokyo, or in Buenos Aires with a technology that is 2 centuries old? And this is what we're doing with the educational systems and with many schools. So now let me turn to the brightest part, because there are many opportunities that technology really help us driving. And I can share some of them that we are cultivating in H Farm, where H stands from human. And what we do, we really invest to use technology to work on 3 main axes in our educational programs. One is equal access. So we're shifting away from a remote-based or location-based learning to a multi-channel school, so that children and teachers can access best knowledge, best teachers, irrespectively from their location and from their learning abilities. The second thing that we are doing, we are designing the learning to make sure that they learn for every possible future. And this is really shifting from a pure knowledge-based learning to a more collaborative, skill-based learning. What we do mainly, we offer students lenses through which they can look at the future that is every day more dynamic. Technology. We help them looking at blockchain, quantum computing, new way of doing value creation. We help them thinking about which is the impact of Industry 4.0, how the value will be created in a metaverse. And then also to think about global systematic challenges and opportunities that they will need to face together with us. Inequality, climate change, and giving them all the possibilities to work on that. The third element that to me is very important to bring, and I recommend all of us to explore into the educational models, are approaches that allow the students to work for solving global challenges and to think about impact at scale. And what we are doing, for example, is shifting away from educating them just to get their job, but really to help them finding whichever job they want in life, but most importantly, to be better human beings. And what we do, we help them working in teams and trying to look at global complex scenarios. Some of them are really present nowadays. I don't know, climate change, migration flows, but then there are also opportunities like how will be life and society when the life will be extended over 120 years. What will be life when our communities will have a community where we have human beings and autonomous machines? And we should give them the chance to use the knowledge to start addressing these elements.
So thank you. Let's go to the next round. We have just a bit of time, so 1 minute each, very quickly. So ending on a forward-looking note, could each of you share one promising example of EdTech that you believe can or will contribute to the improvement of access, equity, and learning at scale? So let me start with you, Antonello.
Okay. Thank you, Charles. I'll try to put that in a perspective. So 2 different views. One, if we look at education, we see that we have around 1.4 billion students and around 80 million educators in the world. we see that we have around 65 million that drop out from primary education every year, and we have 775 million of illiterate adults. At the same time, let's say around 4 or 5 weeks ago, a gentleman that is an influencer called Lipstick King was able to sell 1.7 billion US dollar of cosmetics during a 12 hours live stream on Alibaba. I think that there is a huge gap. I think that technology is there. It's up to us to use all this technology to reach the students, to give them the power to really develop better selves.
Let me go to you, Karina.
Sure. That's a great example, and I will say, AI, the ability to customize lesson plans for students to teach sort of the same topic, but on, using a storyline that resonates with the students, whether it's on the area of sustainability, energy, social justice. I think that's an amazing opportunity to get students engaged and involved. So.
Fantastic. Okay. And Audrey?
I think artificial intelligence is very promising in the field of digital education. In France, the French government about a year and a half ago called for projects to boost innovation in the EdTech companies, to propose tools that use AI, that make use of AI to assist teachers in the learnings of the basics of French and mathematics. And there was one scheme to respect. They had to be a partnership between research labs and EdTech companies. And that's where we went through this past year. We had 3 phases. First phase is research and development with work between research labs and EdTech companies to share the knowledge on cognitive science, artificial intelligence, etc. Built together a new tool. And from 20 proposals, there was 5 projects that went through this phase, and now we are in the second phase of industrialization, and the third phase is just beginning in the beginning of next year to make use of these products in real classrooms, and it's very, very promising. I think this is a good method to go through innovation and to have useful tools for education.
Great. Thank you for that. And Aida?
So I would say the biggest value of any educational technology is to bring equality and bring accessibility to children, to have like the best of the education in a customized and individualized manner. But unfortunately, during the pandemic, what we saw was that a lot of children are not even able to attend a virtual class through a simple Zoom call or a team meeting, and so simply because of not having a stable and affordable internet connection. So from the technology perspective, I would say there is a lot of great things and initiatives happening in the world of the educational technologies, but what I would see as the biggest impactful, basically, technology that can facilitate the access to these kind of technologies is to have a good internet, maybe through a satellite internet provider or anything that can make internet available in the remote areas with affordable costs. So hopefully there is no children in the world who cannot benefit from these amazing initiatives and technologies just by not having the access. So I would hope for that.
Great. Okay. So, and David, final word on this one.
Thank you. First of all, as chair of the GEM Reports Advisory, I must invite everybody to please go and access the GEM report launched yesterday, 2021-2022, who chooses, who loses. And I think you actually do mention that we have to write the rules. And we have to, I think, non-state actors have a great role to play in EdTech in particular. I think my one take-home message is let's open source EdTech platforms. I mean, being on GPE, I know that countries have spent hundreds of millions over the last year and a half on EdTech platforms. Every country has their own EdTech platform. Why? EdTech must be a digital public good. I think as a world, we need to take a stand that says we have understood that we are not where we want to be. We are not going towards the SDG 4 goals. We are not going to meet it. We are not going to. COVID has opened all of our eyes to say even those who thought they were on track are not necessarily on track. Nobody has the answers. And the world is at a space where we can use this moment to say, you know, why should we privatize the fundamental EdTech platforms? Why does Sierra Leone need to go and spend $20 million to build an EdTech platform when France has one? Why should Rwanda go and build its own EdTech platform when UAE has one? We can inspire and incentivize our entrepreneurs locally to focus on content, to focus on customization, to focus on how we make it work for our communities. But we have to, as a world, take a stand that says EdTech platforms, and let's define the rules, must be open source and available to everybody. That's missing, and that's what we should do.
Thank you so much. That's great. So, as we've been hearing, COVID-19 has changed everything. There is now a much greater recognition that strong and inclusive national education systems and global platforms are essential to the short and long-term recovery of society and education systems. So thank you, panel, for all your great thoughts, your examples. I'm just trying to take some notes and trying to see what we could pull together from all these different ideas. A few that just come out to me, and it doesn't begin to capture everything, but one is the part of the customization, but in order to reach the last child. Whether it's the child who's in a rural area or the one who has autism or other challenges. It's about having a framework, rules of the road, that makes it easier for everybody to develop their platforms, develop their software to reach those folks at lower costs. It's about having platforms that can reach, that everybody can enjoy. Along with the rules of the road, it's having those platforms so everybody isn't reinventing the wheel, and then we can build on that to reach the last child. It's about looking to the future, not about just solving today's problems, but educating children for tomorrow. And it's about looking at new technology, AI in particular, and how that can transform our thinking about education systems. So with that, let me thank you all for your contributions, and thank you all in the audience for your participation. Thank you all.
Thank you.